Our next storyteller is Chike Nwoffiah, and he's directed films and directed plays. He founded the Ariki Theater in Mountain View, and he has been. I met Chike. I don't know exactly when we met, but over 15 years ago, he came and participated in a group discussion of African Americans around the table. And he was the only one who was first generation. And he comes from Nigeria. And I will never forget he was so struck by how his life was different than the others at the table. But the things he told us about his upbringing and what it left him with has never left me and my appreciation for him and his story. So I was glad I found him and he was available to share some of it today. Thank you.
Is this on? Yes. Well, thanks, Elliot. It's good to reconnect with you after so many years. My story. You see, I remember, I do remember, as if it was yesterday, the announcement, this interesting announcement over the speakers interrupted my sleep, and I opened my eyes, and the announcement said something about seat belts and final descent and trays. And so I rubbed my eyes, I lifted the window shade, and I looked out into the horizon, and I saw what I thought were houses and tucked into hills. And then as the airplane dipped a little bit more, the big wing of the airplane obscured my view. I stretched my neck some more. I was getting very excited, the rumblings in my stomach, and I wanted to see it all. And then I saw it. I saw it. It was standing tall and majestic. Its rust colors were kissed by the sun. And underneath this magnificent edifice, the water lapped in the wind. And a few minutes later, the sliding doors opened and I walked through, my luggage in tow. And thus began my 25-year journey in San Francisco Bay Area. You see, ever since that very first summer day when I arrived San Francisco International Airport, I've had a good one. America has been great to me. I met my wife here. She's an American. I have a beautiful son. I've had a great career. I shouldn't say had, I still do. But I think just as life, this incredible journey has also been dotted with stories that has revealed a deeper America to me. And so here goes my chapter 1, Identity Crisis. You see, where I come from the Igbo ethnic group of southeast Nigeria. Where I come from, I've always been me, Chike Nwoffiah, the son of my father, the grandson of my grandfather. Period. That's my identity. And perhaps sometimes, depending on company, I could be identified as Igbo, my ethnic grouping. But when I got to the United States of America, America welcomed me with open arms. But it had a pre-packaged identity for me waiting. And it handed that to me within the first 2 hours of my arrival. I became black. I had never in my entire life been identified as black until I showed up in these United States of America. There was no handbook. There was no manual about what to do with this identity that was waiting for me. No one had told me, but it was given to me. I remember asking one of my very first acquaintances what to do, what this was all about, and what that meant. He laughed and said, "You'll find out soon enough." And was he ever right? As I got followed in grocery stores and shopping malls and received interesting stops by cops, I began to realize what this new identity meant. You see, I come from a fairly middle class, or if you will, the upper middle class family back home. I went to a British boarding school. We wore blazers and ties. And we were doing Shakespeare at the age of 10 and 11. That was back in Nigeria. I wasn't black. It was me, just me, Chike Nwoffiah, the son of my father, the grandson of my grandfather. But here I was in the United States of America. I was black. I needed to do something or be something or understand, first and foremost, what that meant. There were no handbooks. And then I became African American. That connected a little bit because at least the African that was attached to my American was a place. But then Africa. I remembered growing up in Nigeria that, except for a few of us that were privileged to have traveled outside the country, most of us had no idea what was going on in other parts of the country, let alone other parts of the continent. But here I was to represent 1 billion Africans. There was no handbook. America had given that to me. So I shrugged my shoulders and I said, "You can do this. You can be African. Why not?" And so I recall interesting conversations about African dance. Wow, the continental dance, I guess. African food. I recalled perhaps the continental food of the Africans. I asked myself. African clothes, African music. And then at a point I said, you have to do something about this. I think people here in these United States of America need a little bit of education. Because sometimes people will walk up to me and say, "You are African. I love that accent." And I go, "Oh no, actually better yet, you have an accent." And I remember my father, bless his soul, he's now passed, would tell me when he used to be in England, and they would tell him that, and he would turn around and say, "Which of the accents?" Because he taught me, I remember growing up, that every human being has an accent of sort. And so for somebody to make a blatant statement that you have an accent presupposes that they don't have an accent. There was no handbook. Better still, I remember a senior colleague of mine at work. He had grown to be my mentor. 6 months after I started working, he invited me. He had insisted almost every single time. He would always ask if I could come dine with him and his wife and his family, get to know the folks. And we kept trying to make it happen. And then on this occasion, his wife's family was visiting. And so this was such a perfect time. And so he said, "You must come." And I did. I agreed. We were to meet and eat at a restaurant in Palo Alto, not far from here. There was no handbook. And so we got to dinner. I met a lovely family. Interesting thing happened at the end of dinner, which was completely shocking to me. One of the few of the many lessons into Americana, I think. At the end of dinner, the waiter brought the bill. And I was aloof. I didn't know what was going on. And as this little piece of paper was being passed around and people were underlining prices and scribbling and bringing out calculators, I didn't understand what was going on until my colleague whispered to me that, I needed to chip in my part, which was so to complete the tally and all of that. I quickly made my payment. And when I got home, I made a phone call to my parents and I said, I think I'm finally in America. Now I understand. I must tell you, for those of you that still didn't get it, where I come from, when somebody invites you to dine, they actually invite you to dine. Behold, this was a senior colleague of mine who made about 3 times my paycheck and had insisted that I come dine with his family. And then at the end of the night, I get handed a bill. Where I come from, if I happen to be sitting in a restaurant and my senior colleague all walks in and sees me eating, he just pays the bill, doesn't even ask. Such is the culture I grew up with. But I love this place. I say it. And so the stories are many, but the ride has been great. Such a beautiful country, particularly the San Francisco Bay Area. A friend of mine that came about the same time as I did to this country ended up in North Dakota. And we still talk. He doesn't live there anymore, trust me. But I say the closest thing to being here, to being home, is being here. The weather, the people. I have become an American citizen since. Luckily, my country allows dual citizenship, and so I maintained my Nigerian citizenship. And so now I am a Nigerian American. I have traveled from being the Igbo Nigerian to becoming the Black American, the African American, and authentically the Nigerian American. It is a duality of identity, but as I was explaining to Elliot a few weeks ago, it's actually not a second identity. It's a third. Because to be the transnational that I've become means that I'm neither the exclusive Nigerian nor exclusively American. I've forged a third, which is a blend of the old and the new. It is in this space of the third that I reside now. It is the space where the values of my upbringing, of my childhood, informs my present, interpreted through the lens of the American values and the society that I call home. And so it's in this space that I think that I find who I've really become. It is also in knowing that who I'm going to be tomorrow is always going to be all of these interesting, wonderful stories. The story of the African that represents 1 billion people. The story of me, Chike, the son of my father and the grandson of my grandfather. Now I think I will write a handbook. Thank you.
Thank you.